life brings us a constant array of changes in our business and in our personal life. Changes can be challenged sometimes, but they also can be a major force in creating the lives that we want to live. My guest today is Lethea Owens. She is the president and CEO of Game Changers International, a personal development firm focusing on personal and leadership branding for enterprising entrepreneurs and corporate leaders. She's ranked number 8 among the top 30 brand gurus in the world. Lethea is one of the first individuals to become certified in both personal branding and social media strategy. Lethea, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kathy. You are always up to something interesting and amazing, and I am honored to be a part of your show. This is so exciting.
So, thank you for being here. And I just want to, our days, as I said earlier, our lives are constantly changing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I love the name of your business, Game Changers International.
That's right. That's right.
Will you share with us your story and why you're so passionate about this work?
Absolutely. I mean, where should I begin, Kathy? My life's work is really about helping people really get to their next level of performance so that they can create next level results. I mean, really at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? And so how did I get here, and why is this my life's passion? And I think it's because my mother instilled in me when I was young that I was born for greater than the circumstance or situation we found ourselves in. My mother happened to be, unfortunately, in an abusive relationship. And as a young girl, I saw the negative effects of it. First, it was just verbal. And the first day that my mother's boyfriend struck her, she basically bundled me up. She got all of her stuff, and in the middle of the night, we fled. And I remember her telling me, "Ladybug, you were born for greater than this." And it just instilled something in me to never settle, just to never settle. And so when I look at how it's become a part of my DNA and a part of how I'm wired, I've just learned that regardless of the level of success that we've currently achieved, that there's a next level of performance for each of us, which means there's also a next level of results that we can actually create for each of us. And so that has really been a big driver for me, Kathy. Just whenever I'm mentoring someone, I'm always looking at how can I help them get to their next level. When I'm coaching someone, how can I help them get to their next level? And I could be talking to the lady at the grocery store thinking about how can I help her get to the next level. And so what I would love for your listeners and viewers to really get from this is, number one, they have a next level. But number two, they also are a resource that someone else is probably waiting on in order to help them get to their next level. And so we all play this very beautiful role in the whole development of each other as a human race. And if we could all just really, tap into that, I think the world will be a much better place to live in, to work in, and to, just to do life in. So that's a little bit about my background.
Great. That last statement that you said is so important, I think, for us just to come back around and talk a little bit more about. And that is how we affect everyone in our lives and how everyone affects us in our lives and how powerful that really, truly is.
Yeah, I believe that there's someone right now waiting on you to figure out what your gift is, because they need it, right? And because I look at the people, Kathy, I'm sure you've had people in your life where they showed up and you were like, oh my gosh, what would I do without this person? Or, oh, I'm so glad they gave me that answer. I've been wondering about that or trying to figure that out all by myself. And now here someone shows up, which I call your sage or your guide, right? They show up with the answer and you're like, oh, you're so excited. Well, there are people who are waiting on you to show up in their lives, right? But you have to, or we have to figure out what it is that we have that's a value that we're supposed to deposit into someone else or share with someone else, or a message that we're supposed to share before we leave this earth. And so I think that it's important for us to really put in the effort to do the work and to figure that out, because that gives our life meaning, right? That gives our life substance, and it helps us to be significant in the bigger scheme of things, you know. And I really love the fact that it's not even, Kathy, about where you start in life, right? It's not even about where you end up, but it's about how you finish, right? And the fact that we all get to, regardless of where we started. My beginnings were not so promising. My beginnings were actually very down and negative, if you would ask most people, because I was a teenage mother and no one expected me to when I dropped out of high school, no one expected me to go back to school. No one expected me to eventually, become an honor graduate and get a full scholarship to go to college. No one ever expected me to grace the cover of my, alma mater's magazine. No one expected me to become ranked number 8 among the top 30 brand gurus in the world. And certainly no one ever expected me, the heathen who got pregnant at 14, to earn an honorary doctorate in divinity, right? So it's not about where we start. I don't care where you are right now in your life, on your journey. If you're listening to the sound of my voice, there is still yet time for you to create, to live, to be everything that it is that you've been created to be. And you get to choose how your life will matter and what you do in this lifetime. No one else gets to choose that. You get to choose that. And so I'm excited, Kathy, to just share with your listeners, just how much power they have. I think oftentimes we forget how empowered we really are, because our thoughts become things, and they shape our actions and our beliefs. And so when your thoughts shape your belief and your belief shapes your action, that becomes the life that you've created. And it's up to you to decide what that's actually going to look like. And so that really just gets me excited, Kathy, when I think about it.
I know, and that's why I'm so excited to have you here today, because you do get so excited. You have so much wonderful stuff to share. So I know that you really think that, just 1% is a very powerful number. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely. Most people think that 1% is a tiny number that you can't do much with it, right? What can you do with 1 minute? What can you do with $1? What can you do with one little seed, right? And what I've learned through history is that 1 is actually a powerful number, especially 1%. And let me tell you why. So I love to talk about what I call marginal gains, or the game-changing power of 1%. And 1 is a powerful number when it's compounded, when over time, it's compounded. So if you think of compounding interest, you take $1 and you save $1 a day over a period of time, you can end up being a millionaire within, a certain number of years. Well, the game-changing power of 1% is very similar, except instead of compounding interest, I challenge you to compound your improvements. So what if every day you were getting just 1% better? Just 1% better every day. So if you did that and we do the math, that means that at the end of 365 days of you getting just 1% better every day, at the end of 365 days, 1 year, you would be 37.8% better. What if your business were 37% better at the end of the year? What if your marriage was 37% better? What if you were 37% healthier at the end of a year, right? And so because we understand the power of compounding things, I want to encourage people to think about compounding their performance, their personal development, their growth, and the improvements that they want to make over time. Also, what I love, Kathy, is 1 is such a powerful number because anyone can do it. I'm not saying to someone, you have to stop doing this and being this, and tomorrow you have to be this amazing person. No, what I'm saying is everyone can decide to choose an apple over a bag of chips. That's one thing, if that's the one thing you're going to do. So for me, I'm learning 1 Hebrew word a day. I'm not going to be able to speak the whole Hebrew language probably in my lifetime, but I could learn 1 Hebrew word a day. And then tomorrow I can add a new habit of maybe, what if I just got up 10 minutes earlier? So now I'm getting up at, 5:15 instead of 5 or 15 minutes earlier. So that would be 5:15 instead of 5:30, right? But if every day I'm making one small adjustment or improvement, it doesn't feel overwhelming. Anyone can do that. And so that's what I love about one is it's a small number, which helps everyone to believe that they can do it, but it has such power packed in it. So that's why I think 1% is such a powerful number for people to, keep a hold of and to really grasp a hold of.
Well, and I think the cool thing about that is that it's not about you, like you said, you trying to do this. It's about everybody where they are. And it's 1% greater than where they are. So it doesn't matter where you are. It's all based on you and your personality. So do you have any other stories about maybe you or someone else and how that power of one has made a big difference in their business or their life?
Absolutely. I actually have a mentee named Chris Robinson who I remember, and I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this, but I remember standing in the parking lot of Panera and he was very sad and very down, just in a very low point in his life. Anyone who had a multi-million-dollar business that watched it go belly up overnight in a matter of months would probably be in the parking lot of Panera breaking down crying too, right? And so he had this very challenging thing happened to his business. A law changed, which changed what he and his partners were legally allowed to do in their business. And so everything shifted, but the company couldn't survive. And so he ended up having to sell his house, and he lost more than what many of our houses are even worth, right? Just the loss on his house, the sale of his house. And he ended up having to move back into a home that his parents owned. And just, when you've lived here and all of a sudden you have to come here, that's a hard thing to do. But I remember talking to Chris, and I said, Chris, I'm not worried about you because you are one of the most amazing men that I know. And I just share with him the power of 1%. I said, I know it feels overwhelming right now. You feel like you're losing your mind. But if you would just make one small change every day, make a decision about how you're going to improve every day, then I guarantee you that in a few years, you'll be in a very different position. And so I remember checking in with Chris, a few months later, and he was like taking off. And I was like, whoa, because he was doing things like, meeting one person a day that he felt like had information, knowledge, or life experience that could help him be better. He started reading a little bit every day. And next thing I know, he was reading 30 books in a month, and just watching him apply this principle was so rewarding just to see him do that. But what really hit me was 3 years later to have a conversation with him and to sit down and hear him talk about how he was buying properties and investing in multi-unit, properties, and how he had pulled himself up and had built a successful, speaking and coaching company, and how he was working with John Maxwell. And he's recently been named a VP within the John Maxwell organization. And just a few years ago, he was here. He was here, then he went here, but now he's here, right? So anyone can apply this concept and these principles, and it can help them be more successful. I remember Google, when they came out with this new tool called Gmail. It was great, but it wasn't making them any money. And what they decided to do was experiment, and they made these small little changes. These changes so small most people wouldn't even notice. They're called macro changes or whatever. And so they were changing at this macro level, and they were changing the color of the links to a slightly greener shade of blue. And that tiny change that they made actually ended up making them over $2 billion more in revenue. And we think that 1% is such a small number, but when implemented properly, it has the ability to create some radical results. I mean, amazing results. And so companies, individuals and companies alike are applying this strategy and leveraging the power of 1% to help really shift how they're thinking, to shift how they're showing up, and to shift the results that they're creating in the world.
Well, I'm so glad that you shared Chris's story because, I know Chris, and it is amazing to see where he is right now and where he's going. And and all the good he's doing in so many people's lives. So that's kind of fun to hear that story about Chris.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, where do we start? Can anybody do this? And, and I would say yes, but those people who might have some self-doubt might think, well, that's just not going to work for me. Do you have some place where, okay, how they can start and how they can get started on doing this?
Absolutely. I think almost everyone today is smart, not dumb. Well, let me just say this. Let me rephrase that. I think almost everyone today has a smartphone and not a dumb phone anymore, right? So a great place to start is with your smartphone, right? And if you do have a dumb phone, you might be able to do this, I don't know. But in your smartphone, there's a notes feature. And I would just say to write a little note to yourself and then to set an appointment with yourself every day at the same time of day. And all you're going to do is ask yourself the question, in what area of my life can I focus on today to become just a little bit better? What area of my life can I focus on today to become just a little bit better? Little things for me, like when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going to start wiping down the mirror in my bathroom. Guess what? I'll have less cleaning to do on cleaning day if I do that every day when I'm brushing my teeth. Like, right. So in what areas are, when I'm driving to church, well, I don't drive, but when my husband's driving us to church, what if I wrote one thank you card? That's a 12-minute drive. What if I kept thank you cards in my car and just wrote one thank you card, going to church and one thank you card coming from church and put them in the mail on Monday mornings? I mean, it's just simple, small things, right? But that is going to impact my relationships because I'm going to now be pouring into people in a way that I haven't poured in before. And so that's just a small example of how I can do that. But there are other ways and other things that you can do if you really sit down and make an appointment with yourself every day and say, in what area of my life can I improve that will, make a difference in the life that I'm living? And when you take that time and you set that appointment with yourself, you're going to find yourself coming up with some really, really creative things. So here's the thing that I want your listeners to also understand, Kathy, that every time you make a decision to do something great or to be better or to shift for the better or for good, opposition will show up. And it's like our old self is always at war with our new self. We have these new habits we want to create. I remember, there's some things that you've taught me that after working at it really hard for a while, like I have a mad organizational system on my computer for how I manage files. So much so that people, when they see it, they're like, can I copy that? And I'm like, yeah, Kathy Sexton taught me how to do this, right? So there are some things that you get, and when you get it, you just get it. But there are other things that, you have to actually work at harder over time. So for me, that's like email management. So email is an area where if I could, when I'm thinking about how I can be better, what is something I can do today to help me be better in my email? And I may not ask that question as it relates to email again for another 10 days, but if 2 or 3 times a month, I'm putting something into place that's helping me get a little bit better with managing my email, then over time, I'm going to be in a situation where my email is finally being managed and controlled properly, right? So think about the areas in your life that are most important to you, the areas that are most out of control, right? The areas where you need the greatest amount of growth. Think about those areas and then begin to, break it down and say, how can I improve in this area? Or how can I improve in a way that makes this better? When you start asking those questions, your brain is one of the best and fastest computers on the planet. And when you begin giving your brain different questions and different problems to solve, you'll end up with different answers. And so I think that's a great place to start when you think about leveraging the power of 1%.
Well, as you were saying that, the thing that came to mind was that sometimes people will say, okay, well, start with this or start with that. And you're not saying that. You're saying, ask yourself, because today might be different than yesterday.
Yes.
So I love that you're asking yourself, because it will be something different versus us trying to strive for something only in one area. And when we're growing, because then we grow in a much broader way and develop our minds and our lives in a full way versus in one direct way.
Yes. And I think about one of your programs, Prescription for Success. And you think about if you go to the doctor and he's going to, write you a prescription, he has to ask you questions about where you are, right? And so if you're asking yourself those questions, you get to take the pulse of what's important to me today, what matters today, what areas do I need to grow in today. And it's very much an in the moment kind of thing, because if you try to say, today I'm going to focus on this, but then 40 days out, I'm going to focus on this. And then 200 days out, I'm going to focus on, that's not going to work. It's going to be so uninspiring. And the power of asking yourself that question daily is that it inspires you. Like there's something that happens at a gut level where you become inspired and motivated to actually do the work.
Yeah, that I just love that idea, and I love, because then it becomes self-motivation. Mm-hmm. And yeah. I think that's the best form of motivation, is self-motivation. Absolutely. Instead of it coming from some external way.
Yes.
And, I love the way that, and I can just see that flourishing. I'm gonna ask you now, I know that you're on a new mission. I know that, and about helping women and faith in their business. Would you mind just kind of giving me an update on where you are and what's going on with this?
Oh, yes. I believe that this is some of my best and most important work, which is tied to Audacious Faith, helping women grow their faith and their business. And this work I think is so important, Kathy, because I feel like by doing this work and helping women who are on a mission, who have a passion and a purpose for making a difference in the world in some way, me pouring into them allows them to be effective in pouring into other people. So I feel like I'm touching hundreds of thousands of people just by helping these women do what they do well. And with Audacious Faith, we're a community first and foremost. And we're teaching women how to not only gather well and serve well, but how to love each other well. Because in business, sometimes it can be kind of lonely in business, have you experienced that, Kathy?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah. So sometimes it's pretty lonely being in business for yourself. And one of the things that I hear women saying often, and I experience the same thing, is that when they leave the corporate environment and they start their own company, one of the things they miss most is community and being able to walk over to the water cooler or the coffee pot and run into someone and have a great conversation. And so what we realize is that while we're called to experience great business success, I don't believe that God wants us to or expects us to do this by ourselves. And so Audacious Faith creates a space for women to be able to collaborate together, to come together as sisters and to support each other, to love each other, to be a mirror for one another, to share resources and information with one another so that we all can be better together. And that's really what we're all about. We are a virtual organization, but with opportunities to have some live training and experiences. And we really are about contribution. So we're one of those weird, I say weird in a good way, but one of those weird communities where we ask you to do things and expect things of you that no one else will probably ever ask. That's because we also know that you have something inside of you that other people may have never seen. And so when we say that we're a community of, and contribution is one of our cornerstones, it's like going to McDonald's, ordering a burger, and then having to jump behind the counter to make part of your burger, right? And it sounds weird, and people are like, wait a minute, I'm paying to be a part of this community? But what happens is when everyone takes an ownership in helping the community grow and thrive, then the value of the community becomes so much greater, because what people are getting out of it is not just access to Lethea, but access to Kathy's brilliance, to Tammy's brilliance, to Melissa's brilliance, to Suzanne's brilliance. And that is, I think, the power of collaboration. And so that gets me really, really excited. If someone is interested in learning about us, they can always visit myaudaciousfaith.com, myaudaciousfaith.com. Thank you for letting me share that, Kathy.
Well, we'll have you back on at another time, and we can really just talk about that. But I know that you just are, blooming with this, and I know it touches your heart a lot, and I love being a part of it, and I wanted to share that with the audience.
Yes.
So let's just come back around to, how we can, power of one, or just, changes in how we can help ourselves make a difference in the world. So is there anything, last comments that you want to, or thoughts that you want to share?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that is important for us to do is to figure out a way to believe in ourselves. And I say figure out a way because, Kathy, there was a point in my career when I had other people who believed in me more than I did. And sometimes you have to believe more in someone else's faith in you than your own until your own faith catches up, right? But you got to find a way to believe in yourself. That may sound cliche-ish, that may sound simple, but life, I wish I could say it was different, but to me, life is hard. Like there are great moments in life, but life is not easy. Like it is not especially being an entrepreneur, is not for the faint of heart. But you have to learn lessons. You have to, lay aside pride. You have character flaws that you sometimes have to, correct. You have to learn things that you probably don't want to learn. Like life is challenging. But also I want you to know that life is also extremely rewarding. When you're able to take off the mask and be who you really are on purpose and without apology, and when you can tell the world, this is who I am, and when you learn to stand in your power and really focus on doing things that really matter. And as I like to say, create your list of non-negotiables. Kathy, you gave me a book some years ago and told me to read it, and it changed my life. And it was the book by Sam Silverstein called Non-Negotiables. And basically, I think that if we think about, changing the game and showing up as a game changer in this life, we have to also be willing to do the work of understanding what our non-negotiables are, because our non-negotiables, I know at least for me, they govern my life. Like they help me to say no to opportunities that are not good for me. And they help me to stretch in areas where I know I need to kick it up just a little bit. But my three non-negotiables are, and these are things that you decide that if an opportunity or if a situation does not meet this criteria, the criteria that you set for yourself, then it's something that you're not going to do. And it has saved me so many headaches. I can just say that. But number one, if an opportunity or situation doesn't honor the calling that's on my life and God's will for my life, then I'm not going to do it. If an opportunity violates my well-being or is not in the best interest of my well-being, whether that's my health, whether that's my energy, or whether it's my relationships with the people that I care about, then I'm not going to do it. Or if an opportunity is not in alignment with the lifestyle I'm trying to live. I'm trying to move to a 3-day work week, not a 10-day work week, right? So if taking on an opportunity would require me to work tons and tons of more hours, I'm not going to do it, because I'm, like I said, in 2 years, by the time I'm 50, I want to be working, 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to do service projects and to focus on growing, reading books and going to study with experts and mentors and just traveling the world, seeing the world and making myself a better person. And then spending Sunday doing, nothing, taking a Sabbath on Sunday. And so my non-negotiables are, I would have never gotten to that place of being able to say that I want to work a 3-day work week if I had never done my non-negotiables. But now that I've done that, and that's clear, and it's becoming part of my life and part of my rhythm, I can now say, what's my next level from here? What's the next best version of my life that I can create? And so that's what I'm off to. And so it's just always so exciting to be able to be mentored and loved by someone like you. And you've been an amazing coach and mentor and friend to me, and I appreciate that. And I just wish, everyone had a Kathy Sexton in their lives. Well, actually, they can. Now that they listen to this podcast, they can now have Kathy Sexton in their life. And I just want to say that if you're, looking to really take your business and your life to the next level, one of the people that I trust most to help me on that journey has been Kathy Sexton, and you can't go wrong. So please tune into this podcast, save it, listen to it often. She's going to have some amazing guests, and I know I'll be tuning in, so I'm excited if no one else is.
Thank you for that, Lethea. And so why don't you tell everybody how they can find out more about Game Changers International?
Yes.
And Lethea Owens.
Absolutely. We're so excited that we're rebranding because I am standing in my power. I'm actually getting clear about what it is that I want to do in this world. And so you can check in with me at any time by going to letheaowens.com, because as I shift and morph, that will be the place where everything that I'm up to, all of my projects, core projects, will be listed on that website. And you can learn more about my corporate keynotes on the topic of personal branding, my faith-based keynotes on Born for Greater, or more about the Audacious Faith community. You can find it all at letheaowens.com.
Well, thank you, Lethea, for joining us, and I can't wait to have you back.
Oh, I can't wait to come back. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Today we have Kathy Davis from Davis Creative, and she helps you author your book. So let's welcome Kathy. And Kathy, will you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started?
Oh, I'd love to. So 2003 in December, I was downsized. I was at a major financial institution as a creative director for their trust division. And I could not wait to get out the door after I learned that my department was being downsized. So nothing against the financial institution. I was just ready to work for myself. So that's when I started doing independent consulting. And my husband joined me when he was downsized in 2008. So that was 5 years later. And I've been doing this for the last 15 years. When we first initially started, we were a generic branding services agency. And over the years, we've had to pivot several times to keep up with technology or people moving from printing to technology. And we now find ourselves in a position where 95% of what we do is we use the power of publishing to help our authors, our clients, grow their businesses. So we help them find their voice, tell their story, and learn how to use that power to grow their business.
Great. Well, you mentioned about pivoting, and that is just such an important thing, to be agile enough with your business that you can pivot when you need to pivot.
It's a scary spot to be in if you're not used to it. I can say I now almost kind of enjoy the pivot. It's kind of like thinking, okay, what can I do now? What's next? What am I not seeing that I can maybe be doing to be more profitable or be more conscious of what our clients are really asking for? And that tends to initiate a pivot if I stop and listen to what my clients are really asking for.
Okay. So let's just talk about writing a book. So why should I, if I'm a business owner or an individual even, why would I want to write a book? Or why should I write a book?
I can tell you that the market is very saturated right now with a lot of people out there writing their books. It's very easy to get your book as an independent publisher up on Amazon. The trick there is, though, to get it up on Amazon and have it look as if it has been professionally produced, because just like your business card, your logo, years ago we used to remember the old 3-panel brochures? I don't know anybody. Every now and then I'll still see one, but most people have moved beyond that. Every piece of information that you put out as a small business owner tells your story. And a book is just another way to do it. It doesn't have to be a lengthy book. It could be a much smaller version, maybe less than 100 pages, pocket size. But what that book does, it gives you a chance to what I call put your stake in the ground. This is my message. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what makes me bigger, better, smarter, different than all those other people that do what I do. And it helps you stand out in a crowd.
Well, I know that this area can kind of be kind of fearful for people. So there's a lot of options out there, right?
There are a lot of options. The one we've already mentioned is the independent self-publishing. You can upload your file into Amazon.com, pick a photo, create a cover, pick a font, type out your title and your subtitle, hit a button, and zoom. It's done. At the opposite extreme of that is the traditional publisher. And here in the US, there's probably a half dozen or so traditional publishers that still exist that are any reputable background, and the ones that have been around for decades, if not over 100 years. So those people are all represented by agents. And the only way to get into those traditional publishers, say if you think of John Grisham or J.K. Rowling, who did the Harry Potter series, or any of those well-known authors, they all have agents. And so those agents will take a piece of your profit once your book gets published. And by the time you get your royalty, so let's say J.K. Rowling probably gets somewhere between 50 cents to $1 for each book that she sells. Now, because she's at such a high profile type of author, it's going to be closer to that $1 range. Plus, she's going to get an upfront fee to write the next book, because she set a precedent for what her stories do and how much, ultimately those publishing companies, they want to make money too. They want to stay in business. So they're going to follow those authors who are very popular. Now, in between those two extremes, the do-it-yourself and the traditional publishers, you have what I call just a kind of a murky, muddy water kind of pond. And you'll find a lot of people who may have published one book themselves who are now calling themselves publishing consultants. You'll also find what's known as vanity press, where I grew up in the printing industry, and all the printing companies are trying to find new ways to stay afloat and stay in business. And a lot of them have started calling themselves publishing companies. What they're really doing is they're still printing companies, but they're printing your books for you. Now, with the do-it-yourself model back on Amazon, you don't have to buy a bunch of books up front. It's print on demand. You only have to buy what you want. If you want 10 or 12 or 100, that's all you have to buy. In that middle kind of murky water arena where the printers may be trying to sell you books, their whole goal is to sell you thousands of books. And we always tell our authors, please don't buy 1,000 books unless you know you already have those 1,000 books sold. If you're working at going to a convention to speak, you're the keynote speaker, you have breakout sessions, or perhaps every person who is attending your session gets a book when they sign up and register for the event, then most certainly you want to make sure you have books for everybody who needs them at that event. And it may be 100 or it may be 1,000, depending on how large of an audience you attract. But it's very much a murky water in between the two well-known entities of do-it-yourself or traditional publishing. Now, what has cropped up in that murky water, and I will say I like to call myself in that pond of clarity, where we call ourselves concierge publishing consultants. And what that means is no matter where an author is in their process, they may come to us with an idea. They may come to us with scribbles on napkins. We've had people do that, yes. Just like the CPAs that get receipts and napkins. Yeah, we've had notes on napkins and post-it notes. We help them put all the ideas together. Sometimes they come to us with a manuscript already complete, and we can help them get that book designed and the book published, not only on Amazon, but also through distribution with one of the traditional publishers, through Ingram Publishing. And what that does is it gives them access not only to the world of Amazon, but another 40,000 distribution points around the globe. So their books are automatically not necessarily going to show up in bookstores, but every bookstore on the planet who uses Ingram as a distributor, which is about 95% of the bookstores, will be able to access that book for them.
Oh,
So
awesome.
So what we try and do is we help our authors figure out what's the best process for them, and we give them options at every step along the way, and then they get to kind of pick the path that they choose to go down.
Okay, so the benefit of someone, going through someone like you with a book concierge versus publishing in themselves, what are the benefits there?
Well, I had an interesting conversation this morning with a potential new client who asked the same question, so it's very timely. She had done a fantastic job of designing her book, getting it set up in Microsoft Word, which I avoid at all costs because I don't like Microsoft Word. I think anybody who works in it should be up for sainthood because it's not the easiest program out there. And if they can figure it out, more power to them. But she had a well-designed book. She had her author page up on Amazon. And the trick, though, was that she said, my friends told me about Ingram, but I just didn't know how to do it. And I kept hearing that there was all these backroom arguments between Ingram and Amazon, and I just figured I better stay away from that because I didn't know enough about it. And therein lied the key phrase was, we've been doing this for over 10 years. Our first author, for one of our clients about 10 years ago, was the first author who did a self-published book. And we've learned a lot along the way. So yes, there are some backroom techniques to avoid getting caught between any tussles, so to speak, between Amazon and Ingram, because they see each other as competitors. And there's a certain process that we follow in order to avoid a lot of that nitpicking stuff that we don't want to get us or our clients involved with. And so we have figured out the easiest and most effective route, which will maximize the royalty that the author receives. So because the way that she has her book set up, Amazon is actually keeping more of her royalty than if she had gone through somebody like us. We can show her ways that she can actually keep more of that money in her own pocket.
More than that $1 a book?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. So, if you're independently published through Amazon, you will typically see between $2 to $3, maybe $4 per book versus the $1 or 50 cents that J.K. Rowling is. Now, the scale, you kind of think, J.K. Rowling is selling millions, if not billions of books. So it worked out well for her.
Yeah, a little bit different. So how else can I look at writing a book and how do I get a return on that investment? Be it, hiring somebody like you to help me get it done. I'm going to say it's probably more professional and things like that, but are there any other benefits to someone doing that?
Well, one of the things there's two things we always tell our authors. One is, please don't plan your retirement around the sale of your book.
Right.
Because you're not going to go very far. Two is, it's not about how well your book sells, it's how well your book sells you. So if you think about a metaphor for publishing your book, if you publish your book and you get this big cupcake, and the sprinkles on the top is what Amazon can do for you, and everything else underneath that cupcake either you have to do or we or somebody like us would do for you. And I liken it very much to, if your daughter's getting married, are you going to be the one that was going to make her wedding cake at the risk of whatever your daughter might say about that? Or are you going to hire someone to do it for you? Now, if you're a professional pastry chef, by all means, go forth, make that cake. It will be fabulous, I'm sure. Same with books. If you are a professional book designer, editor, and your stuff, then go forth. Please do it. Like the woman this morning, she had done a very good job, but there were just a few little details that maybe she hadn't thought about that might speak volumes to your reader. After all, you're putting your brand out there and you want to make sure that it looks professional, that it's been professionally edited and professionally designed, because it speaks of who you are and what you do.
Right. So let me ask you, for those who don't know, Kathy Davis, you guys have done my book before, and I've been involved in. Why don't you talk about some of the compilation books that you do?
Right. So there's several ways that you can create a book. one of the books that we're working on right now, a gentleman, he's a speaker and a trainer, and he's been a prolific blogger, that's hard to say real fast, for, a good 10 years. And what we did with him is we helped him organize his blog into blog ideas into 4 main categories. And over the last 6 months, he's been pulling blogs down and putting them in his categories, and we've helped him create an organization to his message so that he already has the content. He didn't have to go out and recreate it. We've just helped him put it together and organize it so that it makes sense to a reader. And then we bring in an editor behind him to make sure that it flows and is easy to read. I don't know if when I write my blog, we sometimes write blogs just like we would speak and talk. And it's different from when you read. You do want them to hear your voice as they're reading your book, but you also want to make sure you got your commas and things like that in the right place. Now, one of the other ways, I can talk a little bit about your book as well as our friend John Ayers, in that sometimes people will pick a number and they may say, 52, was yours 52 productivity tips?
Strategies, yeah.
Strategies, yeah. And then you break those down into categories also so that it makes sense. If someone's searching for a specific answer, they can go to your table of contents, or they can go to your index or in the back of the book, and they can target in. And so that becomes more of a reference manual. So they keep out near them anyway on their desk. The other gentleman, John, when he did his was all about, how to make a sales call and how to make that sales call effective for you. Now, we've had some people, yours made sense because it was 52. We have some people that will do 12 because it's 12 months. We've had one woman in the past year who just picked, she had 47. And I said, okay, well, we're really close to 52. Can you come up with 5 more? No, she couldn't. So we kept it at 47. But it was your guide to, hers was a career, how to change your career and be successful in your next job. So it was 47 techniques. So no matter what number, some people will pick their favorite number. So that's one way to compile it. Is that similar? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. And then tell us about your new project that you're working on.
So we have, as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about pivot, if I actually stop and listen to what people are asking for, which is exactly what happened this time. Over the past 6 months, I'm a member of NSA, National Speakers Association, which is also where I know you. And a couple of our friends had approached me and said, I really would like to do this little tiny itty bitty mini book, something that doesn't cost very much. It's not very large, something that I can give away when I speak. And lo and behold, one of our friends brought me an article that they had seen about it. And a couple weeks ago, we were at a picnic, and one of the NSA members said, oh yeah, I went to this great speaker last week at convention, and she was talking about this and that and that. And it just really got my brain spinning. And so we came up recently, just really last weekend. The title of our new program is going to be Dynamite Books. So it's small in size, a tiny book, but impact huge in power. And it's 100 pages or less. We have 2 formats that people can choose from. One will be the top tips format, and the other will be more of a content-based format where perhaps someone is much more vocal than they are in terms versus the bullet points that you might find in a tips book. These are used a lot of ways by speakers and trainers. I know one of our clients, she will put, if she goes to speak to a crowd, let's say there's 50 people in the audience, the first 2 rows are usually the ones that people avoid. She will put one of those tiny books in each of those chairs and say that, if you want a tiny book, you got to come sit up front. Of course, people will try and grab one and run to the back, and she always turns the focus onto them to pull them back up. So it's a great tool for getting your message out there. It's a great short read when someone has an airplane trip or a commute home where they can, read a book if they're not driving. And so it's a great, and it's a less expensive way. It can also be done in anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Typically, a project, when we're doing a book between 100 and 200 pages, can last anywhere from 8 weeks to 8 months to a year, depending on how quick that author will move. I mean, we can get it done in 8 weeks if we push them, if the book is already written. These tiny books, we can actually help you put it together between 6 and 8 weeks.
Wow, that's a really short time frame, and the chances of getting that, being able to do that and getting that done, it can be more manageable for some people.
Well, and as we come out of the summer months, I see a lot of speakers and trainers who will have more events where they're speaking and training between September and May, because that allows, and so they're really thinking now is the time. I have one that says, I have an event coming up in the middle of October. Can you help me get something out by then? And we can. We're going to push you to do it, but yeah, we can get it out by then. So
okay, great. Well, let's take a step back and just, when you think about your business, what is some of the most challenging aspects of, running your own business?
in the beginning, I was the solopreneur, so I was doing everything myself. And one of the lessons I've had to learn is learning to delegate, learning to trust that the person I'm just handing it over to is going to take care of it. And then the other challenge that we had is when my husband joined me, we both had worked in corporate environments, and we both had people on our staff that could help us do things. And when you work for yourself, you don't have that. You automatically just either do something or eventually find people to do it for you. So there was a transition period after he joined, and we're in our 11th year now, that he was able to join me in working for ourselves. And there was a transition period where it took us a while to realize that he was waiting for either his assistant, his project manager, or his secretary to tell him what to do next, or hand him the log of what needed to be done for that week or that day, or the next phone call to say, okay, quite often in the marketing and communication industry, not quite often, always, everything is deadline driven and everything is based upon deadlines. And when you're in a situation where you create your own deadlines, you've got to learn to do that. So that was an opportunity for us to learn how to do that together. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's just like anything, around productivity too. If you don't set some deadlines and hold yourself to them, it's hard to get those things accomplished. So if you had one piece of advice, what would that be?
With respect to books or running my own business?
Let's talk about books, since that's what you're basically talking about today.
So one piece of advice for books, and it will go back to, it's not about how well your book sells, it's how well your book sells you. And the power behind that is that it motivates authors. Don't sit back and wait for your book to sell on Amazon, or don't sit back and wait for your book to sell at the back of the room. It's the power of creating the event around the book, or creating the talk, or selling the book at the back of the room, or driving traffic to your website to a specific landing page where you have a free download, perhaps 1 or 2 chapters of your book that gets them interested in your book, so then they take that next step. A book is merely that. It's just part of that sales funnel to help someone learn to know, like, and trust you, not only as an author, but as a business owner, and want to do business with you in other ways.
Yeah, and I think it just gives you a little bit more credibility. It kind of, I look at it just as a marketing tool. I really don't look at it to make money on it. I give way more books away than I ever sold. Yeah. So before we wind up here, why don't you tell the audience how they can find out more about you or contact you?
So we've had our URL for a long time, and I'm really proud that we got it when we did, but it's real easy, daviscreative.com. That's the easiest way to find me. The other way is Kathy with a C, L Davis on Facebook, and it's also Davis Creative on Facebook, either one of those. And then on LinkedIn, it's Kathy L. Davis. So I add the L because there are a lot of Kathy Davises in this world. And occasionally we do get confused about who does what.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for your time today and sharing your wisdom, and maybe getting a few more people excited about writing a book for that, to benefit themselves and their business.
Thank you, Kathy, for having me be part of this today.